If you are not satisfied with a decision made by the Traffic and Parking Commission, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. I ask for approval of the July 9th meetings.
So moved.
We have a first.
Second.
We have first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Approval of the consent agenda. Please note that items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. Are there any items that people are looking to be removed? I think.
Well, you got one, John.
Oh, did I not do that? Thank you. Okay, I guess I moved right past that one. Okay. I was in a hurry on the minutes. Okay. I seek approval for today's agenda. Okay.
You're going to do the corrections as we get into the consent?
Yes, we'll do that. Okay. All right, we have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Thank you, officer, for keeping me straight. All right. On the consent agenda, do we have any, I know we've had a member of the audience express an issue about item C. Is that correct, Chip?
C, I'm requesting a removal from consent and then a follow-up deferral for 1 month.
Okay. Do any commissioners?
Which one is it, John?
C, it's item C, under parking regulations.
I'll make a motion to remove that from the agenda and defer for 1 month.
Second.
I think we have to have two separate, right, Terry?
We need a,
One to remove and one to defer.
I think.
yes.
I think you could probably do it together, but it might be cleaner to do it separately.
I'll motion to remove.
We have a first on remove. Is there a second? We have a first and a second. All in favor of removing item C?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I'll read item C and then we can have another motion. Item C is request for no parking or standing 24/7 on the north side of West End from 20th Avenue South to 375 feet west of 20th Avenue South, requested by the Graduate Hotel. Is there a motion to defer?
Motion to defer.
We have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you. All right. Are there any other items on the consent agenda? If not, I will read the consent agenda and we'll seek approval. Okay. Mandatory referral, item A. Proposal 2018M022AB001, a request to abandon a 15.9-foot wide, 3,171 square feet portion of the north side of Malloy Street and to shift right-of-way south. See site plans for details. Easements are to be abandoned, retained, and designated, requested by Bradley Errant Boat Cummings LLP applicant. B, proposal 2018M019AB001, a request for the abandonment of 45th Avenue North from Clover Street southwest to the railroad right-of-way. See map for details. Easements are to be retained, requested by Bradley Errant Boat Cummings LLP applicant. Item D, request for residential permit parking on First Avenue South between Hermitage Avenue and Peabody Street, requested by Councilmember O'Connell. Item E, authorized three-way stop on the intersection of Stone Run Drive and Holt Run. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Requested by Councilmember Swope. Item F, modify speed limit from 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour on Stone Run Drive from Redmond Drive to N, requested by Councilmember Swope. Item G, authorize an all-way stop at the intersection of Central Valley Drive at Valley Grove Drive, requested by Councilmember Glover. H, request to change Piccadilly Road to a through street from Una Antioch Pike South to Una Antioch Pike North, requested by Metro Public Works. Item I, modify the speed limit from 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour on Sutton Hill Road from Snowden Road to Battlefield Drive, requested by Councilmember Pulley. Item J, authorize all-way stop at the intersection of Winton Drive and Highlander Drive, requested by Councilmember Blaylock. Item K, authorize all-way stop at the intersection of Hickory View Drive and Hickory Plaza, requested by resident. Item L, authorize a four-way stop at the intersection of Twin Hills Drive and Paula Drive, requested by Metro Police. Item N, authorize a stop sign on Truett Avenue at North 20th Street, requested by resident. Item N, this is to modify the speed limit from 30 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour. Is that correct?
That is correct.
On Elliott Avenue from Hillview Heights to Bradford Avenue, requested by Councilmember Sledge. Authorize, item O, authorize all-way stop at Noble Valley Drive and Patrick Road, requested by Councilmember Waso. Item P, modified speed limit from 40 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour on McGavick Pike from Lebanon Pike North to railroad tracks, requested by Councilmember Syracuse. That is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
So moved.
We have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda has been approved. Okay. I think we're going to do what next item is item 1. An ordinance amending Title 12 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws to regulate operators of systems of shared urban mobility devices such as bicycles and scooters, and to establish a permitting system for same. Bill sponsors Councilmember Elrod. Legal counsel, I understand this is a discussion item.
So yes, so this is really just an update for you all in terms of the status of this bill. As you know, after your specially called meeting on July 30th, this went before the Metropolitan Council on second reading on August 7th. The Metropolitan Council adopted the substitute version, the second substitute version that I believe Mary passed out to you. It should be in front of you. And also adopted, looked at various different amendments in the amendments packet. And Amendment A was probably the most significant one from your perspective because it was sort of the omnibus amendment that incorporated the conditions that you all had placed on your approval of the bill when you recommended it at the July 30th specially called meeting. So I believe that the version of it that council did ultimately pass on second reading was in fact incorporating the kinds of changes that you all had asked for in your conditions in your motion when you reviewed the bill yourselves. And so the process is not quite complete. There will be one more reading before council, third reading, which should occur on August 21st.
Can you tell me where Amendment A is, what page?
I'm not sure Amendment A was passed out, but I have it, so I can just circulate well, it's kind of stapled into the entire amendments packet, but I can turn to that page and just pass this copy of it around.
Thank you.
And will we have minutes from that meeting? I guess they're not here, but they'll be next time.
I think at the next meeting, we're planning to approve that.
That is correct.
That's all,
That's it.
unless you have any questions.
Does any commissioners have any questions for legal counsel? Okay, all right, thank you. All right, the next item is a deferred business item from the last meeting. It's to authorize residential permit parking at 4500 Nebraska Avenue to 4501 Utah Avenue from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m., requested by Councilmember Murphy.
At the request of the council member, she's requesting a 1-month deferral.
Okay. Do we have a motion to defer?
Motion to defer.
We have a first. Is there a second?
Second?
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The item is deferred. Okay. The next item is authorized removal of truck prohibition on Couchville Pike between Reynolds Road and Bell Road, requested by Councilmember Waso. She is here. Councilmember, would you like to step forward? Is there anyone else here to speak about this? Okay, thank you. All right.
Do you want me to start?
Well, we'll let the council member speak first.
It's in here.
Welcome.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. About removing the restriction signs at Bell Road and Couchville Pike and at Reynolds Road and Couchville Pike. And they've moved the one at Reynolds Road up to the opposite side of the industrial park now. But the only reason I'm asking is because there is an industrial park there now, and there's a FedEx, it's my understanding, that's going in there. And so it's just to allow the trucks to get to their place of business. And the neighborhood plan, according to planning, is for that to become all IWD. So the people that are selling their properties, that's the zoning that they're looking to do. And we've spoken, myself and Councilmember Johnson have spoken with the residents on Couchville Pike, and nobody is opposed to this.
All right, thank you. I think we'd ask
So,
Ollie, Chip.
so the graph in front of you, the picture in front of you shows, we're talking about the section on Couchville. Reynolds right now is still proposed to stay as is, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Council Lady. But Couchville Pike, we're proposing to remove the truck restriction, and this would have probably been a consent item, but there was a little bit of, there were a few emails going around. I think I've sent you a couple of emails, and so we weren't comfortable putting it on consent agenda. Ali can speak about the technical component behind why we're supporting the removal. So Council Lady's in support, Council Lady Johnson's in support, staff is in support, but we wanted to bring it to a public forum because you saw the emails going around. So we wanted to give everybody their day to testify. So if you want to hear from Mr. Afis, that's up to you guys, or if you're ready to make a motion, that's up to you.
I think last month we just had some questions about, there was some confusion over whether or not the engineering that said the street was able to handle the trucks. And so is that just you clarifying that the street wasn't in fact able to handle the trucks?
Mr. Afis has gone out to the site numerous times, and he can tell you about the width and the pavement conditions if you want to hear that. There was a question about the truck turning radii. I don't know if you got that email, but
What is your question?
Well, I guess there was some confusion last month over whether or not the pavement could handle trucks.
Oh, yeah.
And then there was an email that had questions about the turning radius, whether or not it was appropriate for trucks. So if you could just
Couchville Pike is a
speak.
collector street. Been in collector for a long time. The pavement is good standard for a collector standard, and they support in trucks. As in fact, they use it now. Most of the Couchville Pike, they use it all the way from Reynolds all the way to Knapp Road and
Mr. Afis, please turn on your mic.
Oh, you don't hear me with that my voice? Turn it down. Yeah, something wrong here.
Oh, you got sophisticated now. Anyway, Couchville Pike is a collector street and designed for many years as a collector standard to all vehicle can use it safely. There is no cracks on it, there is no potholes, double yellow line on it, and edge line on the roadway is in good shape, trust me.
And the other question we got in an email was about, I was just checking here, was about the turn radius as they come, I guess, off of Couchville Pike Couchville Pike onto Bell Road and whether or not there was
Yeah.
sufficient visibility.
Sure. Here it is. Show that location, Corby. As you know, Bell Road, Councilman knows about it too. Bell Road is arterial roadway. Recently, Metro with, I think, TDOT upgrade Bell Road is 52 feet wide with shoulder, 6 feet ead, with you can see it with bike lanes, and the left turn lane also is a very wide to turn left into. Show the other side. See, you could turn left easily from Bell Road into Couchville Pike without no problem. And there is a paving section dash line, so they could use the entire section to turn left into it from Bell Road. Right here. They upgraded it about 5-6 years ago. It's arterial roadway. Yeah, there's no problem at all.
I think, unless anyone else has questions?
Okay. Any other commissioners have any questions, concerns?
Well, where's all the IWD at? Is it all that property over there then?
Yes, it's Couchville Pike on both, it's both sides of Couchville Pike. There's a lot of wooded area that they're trying to sell right now, all that right in there on the, if you're looking at on the left-hand side. And then the properties also on the right are trying to sell some of theirs and having it rezoned.
So is it zoned IWD now or not?
I think some of it is.
Okay.
But the ones that are up for sale, they're in the process. Right now, there's one that's coming up this month in front of zoning.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And Councilmember, we got several emails from, I think, the Neighborhood Association who said they were opposed to it because a lot of people walk on Couchville Pike and that there's no shoulder. So
Nobody walks on Couchville Pike.
what about the residents that
The residents that live on Couchville Pike are fine with this. We've spoken to them, myself and Councilmember Johnson, since it's kind of split in half right there. We've both spoken to the residents, and they're okay with it.
So the people who emailed us were just,
The people that emailed you, the majority of them are from all the way down off Elm Hill Pike or Woodland Point. So they're over half a mile or a mile away from this. I've never seen anybody walking down Couchville Pike, honestly.
so did you go to the traffic, or the Neighborhood Association meeting? Because several of them said they were with the, I don't know what it stands for, DH,
Donald, it seemed like it was Donaldson.
yeah.
No, I didn't know anything about the meeting.
Let me see if I can find what neighborhood association it was. Well, okay. Woodland Point, is that a neighborhood association?
That's the neighborhood that the majority of the people lived in, right there. The lady that spoke last month, she's from Woodland Point, which is at least half a mile down the road, if not a mile.
All right.
Okay. Commissioners,
I make a motion to approve.
all right, we have a motion to approve the removal of the truck prohibition. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Okay. All in favor of this motion, please raise your right hand. We have 3. All opposed? I guess I have to vote.
Sorry, John.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. I'm going to vote to authorize the removal of the truck prohibition. So I guess it passed 4-3.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hammond, I understand you are here to make a presentation on the walking district program that we've implemented around town.
I am, yes, sir. We have a few slides here, if we could bring those up.
Are there sidewalks everywhere that the walking district is?
No, ma'am, there are not, not completely. So I'll talk a little bit about that, about the project. This is a project that's been going roughly 18 months now that we first introduced the Walking District program into 3 neighborhoods in Davidson County. The program was initially brought to us by residents of the Hillsborough West End neighborhood, and we implemented in that neighborhood, which is the most urban of the 3. But also, as this became a pilot project and we wanted to test some of the impacts of some of the countermeasures that we were implementing in that, extended into Cleveland Park neighborhood and the Una Antioch neighborhood to get a different feel for different parts of Davidson County in terms of land use, particularly urban versus more suburban land uses. You may recall the major components of the Walking District program are really twofold. One was we did some special branding of these neighborhoods, some gateway type signage. You see a picture of that here in the middle of the slide that just identified this as you're entering this special part of this community. And the other, probably more substantive change we made was to lower the speed limit in these 3 neighborhoods, generally by 10 miles an hour. So if it was a collector and signed at 35 miles an hour, those went to 25. If it was a residential or local street signed at 30 miles an hour, it went to 20. Those were the two main aspects of the program. And then, as I said, we made these changes and left that program out there for roughly 6 to 8 months before we did some after data collection. So we went out and collected data in the neighborhood prior to making these changes, made the changes, let it sit for a while, and then made some more data collection to test the impacts of these changes. And so that's what I'm going to present to you here this afternoon, and then give you a little bit about where we think this is leading us and what we think some of the takeaways are from this program. One of the things besides just speed and traffic data that we really wanted to capture was going all the way back to some of the initial concerns from those constituents that brought this program to us, gave us the idea, was just the qualitative aspect to it. How did you feel? Why do you feel like you're unsafe walking or making a trip by bicycle, or how does speed impact your quality of life and those types of things? And so we've given some snapshot, and I realize you can't see this, and we can get this information to you so you can have it in front of you. We can email that to you. But one of the things we did was do a survey, online survey, where you could go in and answer these types of questions. We felt like that qualitative data was very important. So we asked questions like, how important is speed relative to other aspects of life in your neighborhood? What about that speed limit? Did that feel too slow? Was it adequate? Did it work? What about enforcement? Do you think you needed more of it? And then over on the far side of the slide, did it result in a substantial change to the way the neighborhood made you feel, or way you felt walking or bicycling or driving in your neighborhood? And also, would you be in favor of more aggressive traffic calming measures in the future? Next slide, please. And one of the other, as engineers, we love data, so the more numbers, the better. And so we also do have quite a bit of quantitative data as well. And so when we look at the before and after result of this data, from a speed standpoint especially, these are the results we find. And again, I'm not going to walk through all of this, and we've done our best to take a stack of data that's really thick and boil it down to some key takeaways as we see them. So this data is grouped into 3 classifications. The one on the far left is the H-Win neighborhood, in the middle is Cleveland Park, and then on the right is Una Antioch. And then the light blue bar graphs have to do with that's the before data. The dark blue bars are the after data. And then they are grouped further into bends, so speed bends. So that's like 30 to 34 miles an hour and 34 to 39 miles an hour. And so you see a before and after for each speed bend by each type of road in each neighborhood. So that's why you have 9 charts. But what we felt like, if you just think about it in simpler terms than that, One of the things that jumped out to us as we began thumbing through all this data and graphed it this way is you see a very consistent pattern here. This very defined curve, with the exception of this one here, but we'll talk about that. This curve, which told us that what we did on a whole was we moved more drivers from the higher speeds to the lower speeds. It may be significant, it may not, we're not sure, but we could tell right away from that curve that that's what we did when looking at the before and after. That's a very promising result. When we dive into it in more detail, we did find that in 20 of 29 before-after data locations that we had, we reduced average speeds in 20 of those. It may have been by a fraction of 1 mile an hour all the way up to about 4 miles an hour, but we did reduce the average speed in 20 of the 29 locations. That, again, was promising to us. Furthermore, we found that we also similarly decreased the percentage of drivers driving faster than 30 miles an hour. That was important to us as well. And in one case, the one we like to cite, the one that we saw most impact was actually in Uniantioch, the most suburban of our areas. And it was on Pebble Creek Drive where we decreased the number of drivers going faster than 30 miles an hour by 27% when we lowered the speed limit and made these changes. So the one that we didn't see, the kind of oddball here, was the local streets in H-Win, which is really kind of where all of this started. And so we dug into it a little bit deeper to try and figure out why we didn't see that regular pattern of shifting people from higher speeds to lower speeds. What we think happens there is this was also the classification of roads, the residential streets in that very urban neighborhood that had the lowest speeds to begin with. The average speed on these streets was already like 22 or 24 miles an hour. It was hard to drop it much from that. And so that's why we find, a little bit of an irregular pattern. Some of those speeds went up, some down, but we didn't see that consistent change in that neighborhood. That, I think, is the summary. I will mention one other thing. To be honest, in this data, a lot of what you hear us as engineers talking about when speed limit issues come up is the 85th percentile speed. That has long been the traffic engineer standard for how we measure and set speed limits. There's a lot of talk in our industry about is that the proper way, and should we look at other things? When we looked at 85th percentile speed, we did not find a significant change when we did these treatments. It stayed pretty well where it was at. What that tells me is we didn't do anything to address the fastest 15% of drivers. I'm not sure we should expect to do that with signage and some pavement markings. That's very difficult to do, and that's where we get back to that question of, do we do more aggressive traffic calming measures in the future? And we're certainly open to that. We're not saying that this is the key to the future is changing the speed limit and putting these signs up. But I do want you to know that we didn't see a significant change in the 85th percentile speed in these neighborhoods. For average speed and for some of those fastest drivers, though, we did. A little bit about what we think this leads us to, really two things. One is we've come to the conclusion, based both on the survey and on the survey data in particular, but also on this quantitative data, that we don't think we're going to identify walking districts in the future in one sense, and that is we don't believe identifying special neighborhoods to get that gateway signage is the key. And there's several reasons for that. It's very difficult to pick who should be a walking district, who shouldn't, what are those requirements, how do we choose that? The cost is a part of that as well. And if we're going to designate special areas, we'd want to keep those as special areas. But then again, everyone could make the argument they deserve to live in this special area, and we would agree. The other aspect, though, of the walking districts, the change in speed limit, that's what we're more interested in. We think that's where we saw more of an impact and where some of those changes, very positive changes in the drop in speed comes from. And so what we are doing now is working with MNPD and with the mayor's office as well, and doing a little more investigation into the feasibility of a countywide speed limit reduction on local streets, residential streets that are typically signed 30 miles an hour now. You all know, because you see all the requests for changes in that, dropping that to a 25 mile an hour speed limit. So we're continuing to investigate that, the cost of that, how would we go about phasing that in, and those types of questions that we don't have answers to just yet, but that's what we're working on. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have on the program or the recommendations, either one.
Questions? Yes.
Are you all, is there a plan, or is this going to be distributed like the listserv groups for these neighborhoods so they know what's happened?
I think as the proposal firms up a little bit, and we're making sure we're all, Metro as a whole, both police, mayor's office, everybody that's involved, as that gets firmed up, yes, we will. We already have this program is really well summarized in two different reports. One is the recommendations and the kind of what we did, and the other are the conclusions out of it. All of that can be made available, and so yes, I think any of that. And I mean, it's no secret working on this. We're presenting it to you today. We've already talked to some of those very early champions from the H-Win neighborhood and expressed our gratitude for them bringing this to us and talked to them. So the word is out there, and I don't think that's any secret. We're just not quite ready to turn the switch yet. But we've had interactions with several council members. Everyone to this point has been very supportive of it.
That's great.
I think is what I talked to Chip about before, was going to 25 is for the new neighborhoods. Chip, didn't we talk about that?
Well, we stopped in the hallway one day and talked about it, yeah.
Do we need to go on forward with that, or what?
Well, that's what Jeff and a group of people are working on right now, that you at a council level will definitely see, and you as a commission will see it as it becomes legislation, because it is a change to the code. In the meantime, but if you've got specifics in your district, or anybody has specifics like you see on our agenda every month, we'll still look at those.
Right.
But this is an umbrella that'll go countywide that takes a little more thought, and everybody's got to get on board and how
Well,
we pursue that.
I think our discussion was all the new neighborhoods was to go ahead and pass an ordinance. Any new neighborhoods being built would be at 25 miles an hour. Who sets that speed limit down to new neighborhoods once they're dedicated? Who's that?
Code, our ordinance.
Okay, so that just
So
needs
if you
to be-
wanted,
I wanted to
keep
amend
pointing at
that.
you. If somebody wanted to sponsor a bill to change that, and you could word it just like that, new neighborhoods that are not currently accepted as right-of-way for Metro be signed at 25 if they're classified as local.
Yeah. Is that what you're wanting to do?
We were thinking it would all be done at the same time, so it would be retroactive to neighborhoods already out there, as well as become the new default speed limit for new neighborhoods.
Yeah, but you can go ahead and start with the new neighborhoods at least. Okay, I'll talk about that. Thank you.
Mr. Hammond, I had a question. It was my recollection that in some of these areas, particularly in, I'm going to say, more suburban areas where there were not sidewalks, that there was striping and some other things used to try to encourage pedestrian traffic. Is that correct? And
Not tagged under this walking district umbrella.
Okay.
We did do some minor pavement markings. That was more of putting the stencil, the new speed limit stencil on the street. We didn't do any kind of quick build walking infrastructure as part of this. We have done that in the past. There are some neighborhoods that do have some of that, but they weren't done. I don't think there were done any in these three neighborhoods as part of this.
Okay. Because it looks very encouraging about the outlying areas that typically don't have sidewalks, where there's a lot of times on-street parking that calms traffic, like I know the H-Win neighborhood has, that the speed limits were reduced.
Right.
And how does that impact, you think? We get a lot of requests for four-way stops, and we've heard countless times that those are not the best traffic calming technique. How does something like this, you think, affect some of what we may have to consider in the future?
It might impact it. My sense is that you will still get a lot of requests for that. And a lot of the four-way stop requests, I think, come from development that's come into these areas and just changes to the way the streets function in some of these areas. Traffic's picked up in some of them, and so some of it's just access to the main road that has not had to stop before. So I don't know if just by changing the speed limit we will see a decreased level of requests for traffic control like that.
I was curious why, with the citywide recommendation, why not go to 20, especially since there's 20 here and a lot of other cities have done 20, and I would imagine if a lot of it is psychological, if you see 20 versus 25, there's maybe a better chance that you'd slow down a couple and get to 25.
Yeah, one of the things that we looked at in setting that and making the recommendation of 25 was the level of compliance that we saw. So we were able to break out the streets that we did actually sign at 20 and look at those compared to 25, and we saw a much higher level of actual compliance at the 25 mile an hour speed limit. For example, when we signed things at 20 and we looked at the average speed, there wasn't one neighborhood that would have achieved any compliance at a 20 mile an hour. When we set to 25, about 40% of the neighborhoods were actually compliant at 25. And then so if you start figuring in, if police give a 5 mile an hour grace or whatever it is, we got a really high percentage of compliance at 25. So that's one of the major aspects. We want to set something reasonable. We also look at the locations where average speed actually went up a little bit. Most of those were on the 20 mile an hour speed limit. I don't think it was people were mad at it or anything, but that's just one of the things that we're looking at and trying to set that.
Because I would be curious with overall, even if there's a fewer percentage complying at 20, maybe the average speed limit's like 24 as opposed to 25, so you're still slowing it down a little bit more, and I think that would be of benefit to the neighborhood, even if it was less compliance, but the overall speed was a little bit lower.
Yeah.
So.
The other thing that we're trying to work through is there are probably 100 streets out there or so that are local streets that are actually signed at 35, and they don't function as local streets. They function, some of them go through industrial areas or whatever, and so we're trying to weigh, do we change those to 25? Do we change them to 30? What's the most appropriate thing to do in those areas? So I think for the most part we're looking at a blanket 25, but that's one of the things we can continue to look at. We have not discussed further a blanket 20, however, but those requests as they do here now will continue to come in, and we'll look at changing them to even slower than 25 where appropriate.
What changed anything changed concerning enforcement with this? And maybe the police can address this.
The biggest change with the enforcement aspect was we had to look at where the neighborhoods and the residents and even people who lived outside the neighborhood but used the collector streets as through streets. Were they informed? Did they have adequate notification that the speed limit was changing? So the main thing that we did with regards to the 3 neighborhood pilot programs was once the neighborhoods were all marked and all the signage was up and the stencils were on the roadway, we went in there and conducted a bunch of traffic stops and just issued warnings, educating the people of the speed limit. And we did that on several occasions for each one of those neighborhoods. And then we went in following that and then started issuing citations. I think if it's an ordinance that's going to be passed, at some point there'll have to be a more significant media blitz informing the people of those changes, because we're not going to be able to go into every neighborhood in Davidson County and go through those steps.
And we had very productive meetings with the community coordinators, 7 or 8 of those, and they were very supportive of this as well. But everyone does acknowledge that there will be more questions about enforcement. MNPD, just like Public Works or any of our departments, are strapped, and those are difficult resources to come by. And so we're not asking for more enforcement as part of this. We think. Like was mentioned, just having it out there, seeing it over a long period of time, over time it becomes ingrained in Davidson County. This is just the normal speed limit. It's a change now, but we think the longer it's out there and going to a county-wide approach will just make it that much more consistent and adhered to.
Are there any other questions, comments for Mr. Hammond? Thank you for.
Thank you all.
I've been waiting to get these results for a while, so this is very encouraging. Thank you very much. is our September 10th meeting. I think the election is set for the 6th, so we should be here in this room.
We do not know at this time.
Okay. Wait.
Sorry.
Watch your emails. Okay. Are there any other questions, items? Yes, Ms. Williams.
I have a question about the valet parking permit at 123rd Avenue South, because we rescinded that at the last meeting, or didn't approve, not rescinded, but we didn't approve their permanent approval. So I know that there's another company. Which company has applied for that permit that they're operating over there now on a temporary basis?
We issued a temporary permit to Parking Management Company. They're in the process of working on getting a curb cut on the opposite side of the street, and that's why we issued the temporary permit.
How long is that going to take?
Current temporary permit is for 45 days.
So there's going to be a curb cut on the opposite side of the street in front of the House of Cards?
The House of Cards, yes, that will be where the temporary curb cut, well, the curb cut will be at that location.
Okay. Well, PMC was the company that got, I mean, they were handling, they had this previously, and they were the company that Sergeant Bork talked about at the last.
PMC is still handling that permit.
Okay.
If there's some kind of congestion or something going on, talk to us. If there's something,
Well, I mean, because Sergeant Bork had brought up that the company was doing U-turns in the street. It was causing trouble with the traffic flow there, and there's been construction on that street for, 2 years. But, so I was sort of confused about why they were issued another temporary permit when we voted last month to not approve their permit.
We have addressed these issues with the valet company, and they're supposedly abiding by all the ordinances with this temporary permit. If we get more complaints, then we will revoke the temporary permit.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Not? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
We have a first.
Second.
Second. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.